Hello. Hello. Welcome. Welcome to Kickoff Pride Month here in Yosemite. We are celebrating it. Despite difficulties, we are forging forward.
Yes.
I'm so proud to be here. I'm so grateful and I'm so happy and honored. Thank you so much, Ranger Connie, for having me. And thank you, Yosemite National Park. My name is Richie DeMaria, or Ella for short, or Richie Teresa DeMaria for long. My presentation is called Transnatural. We're going to go over the geologies of change and transition in Yosemite and the Sierra Nevada, as well as other parts of California. How's the audio? Is it good?
Yeah.
Great. And all the photos and text are by me, unless otherwise noted. So before we go any further, I've got some thank yous. So for anyone who was ever a steward and caretaker of Yosemite Valley, whether from the past, present, or future, all the indigenous tribes and nations listed here, up here, the Alamichi, Newell, Mona, Northern Paiute, Kutsaduka, Chipchauncey, tribes and nations, Santa Barbara City Santa Barbara City College Geology Department, who I'm deeply indebted to for my education, the National Park Service, all my ranger pals, this one goes out to all you all, my family, of course, and you. You guys watching here or at home, because it is being recorded. All right. Oh wait, there is a quote here from the professor, Kristen Sneddon at Santa Barbara City College. We stand on the shoulders of giants, so nothing I say is new. No knowledge I impart is a discovery. It's all been shared before. I'm just trying to reintroduce it and through a new lens. And maybe that's not even new. All right. So I'd like to kick off with this quote from the great Ranger Shelton Johnson. Thank you, Shelton Johnson, for all you've done. So this is the quote. It's a gathering place of water, all the waters of the sky flowing into that one spot, which, hello, welcome, come on in. So we're just getting started. I'll start again. It's a gathering place of water, all the waters of the sky flowing into that one spot, which makes it a gathering of life and a gathering place of spirit. All of those things are flowing through Yosemite. And I think, what better place is there that has such a confluence of so many things flowing together? And the result is music. What a beautiful quote. All right. So the title of my talk is inspired by both of these words. We have transnatural, which means apparently being above or beyond nature, and then transnature, which means to change the nature of, also known as transelemental. And here are the goals of my talk. To use principles of geology to understand transformation within ourselves and others, to understand how beautiful places and people we see become so through many years of change, to interpret Yosemite and the Sierra Nevada as a story of change and transition, to reveal we are all more complex than meets the eye, to understand trans people and animals is natural and reflective of the rhythms, cycles, and processes of the natural world, and to discuss how spending time with Mother Nature and studying the earth sciences can help us understand ourselves in cycles of life and death. And here are a few obscure geology terms that get used in this talk. We've got batholiths, so we're all sitting on the Sierra Nevada batholith, solidified mass of igneous rock. Igneous rock is made out of molten rock. Molten lava, magma is what we call it when it's inside the earth. Lava when it comes out. There's the protolith, that's the original rock before it metamorphosed into a different rock. We'll discuss roof pendants, which is a layer of country rock, or kind of the first sediment laid down, overlaying an intrusion of igneous rock. So there are parts in the Sierra Nevada where there was some sediment, and then magma rose up and turned it into another kind. And then we have terrain, which is a block of crust with a distinct geologic history that differs from the surrounding rocks it is fused with. We'll go into that later. So let's talk a bit about me. And there's my dog, Indigo. So I tried to write of myself a little bit as if I was a rock, deposited. That's what you say when a sediment is laid down. So I was deposited on Earth Day in the Holocene epoch, which we're all living within. born by the name of Richie DeMaria Jr., so that was a protolith, the original rock, in the coastal California, Santa Barbara. So that's Quaternary alluvium and marine sediments, and then there's some sandstone from the Miocene. So then I began my own metamorphosis in 2019 or so with hormone replacement therapy. And then here are a couple different book covers I have put on the story of my life, including conservationist, park ranger, geology student, camper, actor, activist, writer, journalist, server, admin assistant, sister, brother, dog mom. But at different points in my life, you wouldn't necessarily have guessed the others. So currently, I work for Mojave Desert Land Trust as a social media and community outreach coordinator. Here we have our executive director, Kelly Urbanson, who's a rock star of a woman. She's here with Deb Holland, another rock star, a great leader, and thank you, Deb Holland. So MDLT continues to work with the Park Service, continues as in I continue to work with the Park Service since my previous position with the Park Service. It's a cool way of continuing that journey. MDLT has conveyed more tracts of land to the NPS than any other nonprofit. We have properties in Joshua Tree, Death Valley, Mojave Preserve, Mojave Trails, Sand and Snow, and there's a little desert tortoise I saw on a tortoise survey. They are now endangered. No thanks to me, I guess. So here's the Mojave Desert earlier this year. This is the Death Valley, and this is a super bloom phenomenon. Whoa, what the heck? Yeah, it turns out there's some rocks from the Sierra Nevada, perhaps even in this photo. We'll get into that in a bit. So here's me in Death Valley with the hero of our tale, Indigo, young puppy exploring the world. She is here on some rock that might be billions of years old. Wow, this is Cedar Grove. This is Kings Canyon National Park. This is where I was very lucky to call home for a few months. So I used to be a park ranger, which was really cool. I spent 10 months as a campground and fees ranger. I was what was called a COVID hire, so there were limitations on how long I could work with the Park Service. And I was very lucky to live and serve, especially here. Oh my goodness. And I greeted visitors from all over the world. I worked in the fees booth, welcoming people up to Grand Grove and Ash Mountain. And I got to welcome people to the Sequoias. That's a really high honor. I gave a lot of hike recommendations, and whoops, I picked up a lot of trash. And it's definitely hard. It's definitely a hard job, but I'll always be proud of it. Maybe I'll continue in a different way to work again with the Park Service. And especially considering recent events, I'm all the more proud that I could work with the Park Service and be out as my trans self. So you may wonder, why geology? Well, here's a cool example. This is what's called the King's Fold. This is in just outside the border of Kings Canyon National Park, but it's in the canyon. These are millions of years of strata that have been compressed and folded into a beautiful artwork. And here are just some of the reasons so it was around the pandemic. Perhaps you may have heard there's a pandemic that started a few years ago. You may not have known this, but there was in 2020. And around then, so there was a whole new life change that was needed. I was doing background acting and that career temporarily vanished. So here are just some reasons. I don't know if you can read them, but basically rocks are really cool. And I needed a new way to experience my new life as a trans person. I love going outdoors, but I didn't know a whole lot about the outdoors in a scientific perspective. And so I thought maybe if I get into the earth sciences, I might be able to spend some time outdoors. Sorry if I've been in and out of the audio. I'll stay right here. All right. So this is Kings Canyon. Once again, it's a beautiful lake, one of my favorites. It's called Lake Reflection, and it's very nice. So I'm gonna try to bring a little queer discussion into this, which is highly offensive to a lot of people. How dare you? Well, you know, what does this have to do with queerness? So what I say is in this talk, I'm using observations of nature to describe human change and vice versa, I'm not meaning to ascribe a sexuality or political stance to the rocks and rivers, but rather to understand ourselves through their flow and transformation. But we'll see. All right. And so, we do use rocks and gems a lot in pop culture and there's cultural discussions. There are just a few examples. We've got the rock, we've got onyx. We've got onyx, the Pokemon. We have the Emerald City. We have dolomite, Rolling Stones, Jewel, and some of these are even sex symbols, I might say. So, if anyone complains to you, just say, well, people have been using rocks to express sexuality in a variety of ways. And sometimes when we discuss Yosemite, we speak of it in terms of being a cathedral or a temple, but this also is a cultural kind of interpretation, particularly when you consider how folks lived here for thousands of years without cathedrals or temples. They were kind of put on them. So, in a way, we've always been, in one way or the other, encountering this valley through cultural lenses. And what I'm doing is just another variation of that, in my opinion. The Awani Chi people call it Awani, land of the gaping mouth. They ascribe to this land a spirit and an animation. It's not a place where you come to look up, an inanimate place, but a place that is animated already with spirit. And names reflect concepts, and names change with the times. So, if anyone ever gives you trouble about your dead name, we'll say, well, Yosemite's been through a lot of names. In fact, they changed the names of just about every lodging and building in this valley, and it was a huge issue for a while. With such changes as the Awani becoming majestic Yosemite, it's the Awani again. It's all to say that names can be given and renamed and given again. So they're not always fixed. So let's get into it. How did this place form? Let me just check on the time. Okay, wow, it's only 7, so we're about 50 minutes in, great. All right, I love this quote. Geology knows no such word as forever, by Wallace Steller. So here we have the little geologic table. This is several billion years of history compressed into one chart. And I'll tell you, I definitely struggle remembering the order of these things. I'm not an expert, I'm still a student, so I'm still learning. But we're gonna pretty much begin around 480, 450 million years ago, which was quite a time to be alive, as you may remember. So, 470 to 120 million years ago, there was a lot of ocean on planet Earth, and it must have been nice. There would have been no humans. So Yosemite's story begins 470 million years ago or so, during everyone's favorite, the Ordovician period. Earth abounded with new kinds of marine life, and terrestrial plants appeared for the first time in Earth's history. So imagine what is now California was a seafloor, and then parts of this seafloor form what are now the tops of some of these mountains, such as Palisades region or an area called Snow Lake, just north of here. We'll get into that. This is a lithified, so when we say lithified, it means it's become a rock. This is a sponge from the Devonian period that I found near Death Valley. I took this photo outside my house, but this was just outside the park border. And so this rock used to be a living organism. And in a sense, extinctions provide the mineral foundations for future times. So we have a couple of the first extinctions. The one in the Ordovician Silurian time took away 86% of life, and then the one in the Devonian time took away 75% of life. And we'll never really know what life was like back then. Wow, has anyone here been to Death Valley? Heck yeah. So it's about 120 there today or tomorrow. Don't you wish you were there? This is an area called 20 Mule Team Canyon. look at all these colorful sediments. So this is a lot of time expressed in rock. What the heck? Okay, so on the left here we have Zabriskie Point and Death Valley. On the right we have an area called High Immigrant Meadow, one of my very favorites in all the Sierras. Looking towards the northern part of Yosemite, you have the Saurian Crest, you have Tower Peak, and we're looking towards an area called Snow Lake. So what's so special about Snow Lake? Well, the older rocks of the Snow Lake pendant correlate with the Sterling Quartzite, Wood Canyon formations, Zabriskie Quartzite, and Carrara Formation in the western Mojave Desert and San Bernardino Mountains. So where I live is related to where we're sitting right now. You can find correlating rock units all across California. And I think that's pretty cool. Maybe once upon a time, the landscape on the right and the one on the left used to be one. Who knows? So this is me in that area that I mentioned back here. And I just learned this fact when I was doing my research. I didn't really know about the Snow Lake roof pendant. But here's me in that general area dancing a few years ago. I was so naive about all of this. I had no thought of geology in my mind. I was just having fun. All right, so we're zooming ahead in history to the ancestral Sierra. I love this concept. It's so cool. So the Sierra are not the first mountain range to be in this general area. In fact, they had a parent that we call the ancestral Sierra. So about 200 million years ago, which you guys remember, that was remember when Pangea started breaking up? That was crazy. And then over the next 100 million years, a long volcanic arc, which we refer to as the ancestral Sierra, began to rise. That's the Farallon plate. It's theorized, subducted underneath the North American plate. And I say theorized just because plate tectonics is actually super recent. Only in the last half a century or so has it really come into prominence. Think of how long humans have existed without even thinking about this. A long time. So this is what the ancestral Sierra may have looked like on the left. That's a National Park Service photo. And then this is a really cool fact. So the volcanoes there were spewing a huge amount of ash around the time of the dinosaurs. And then there were these forests that had been waterlogged by big river systems, got buried in ash, and then millions of years later, people are looking at them as rocks. Here they are in Petrified Forest National Park, another MPS photo. And that just blows my mind that you get these rainbow-colored rocks that once upon a time were trees buried by a volcano. So, you perhaps know these guys. This is an actual photo from the documentary Jurassic Park. And so another cool thing is Cretaceous. Y'all remember that from being kids? Well, so does the magma rock in this mountain range remembers that time. They were forming as babies around the Cretaceous in magma chambers. And that's when we create, or what began, what we know as the Sierra Nevada batholith. What a concept. Wow. Has anyone been to the Minarets or Mount Ritter? Yeah, so that's what we're looking at here. All right, you can't really read this, but I'll read a little bit of it. So this area is an example of how rocks form in magma chambers. You have these really jagged looking needle-like peaks over here. And excuse me, these authors say the only words that really stand out to us for this is that a record of over 100 million years of fluid flow, alteration, and metamorphism in the evolving Sierra Nevada magmatic arc is preserved in metavolcanic rocks of the Ritter Range pendant and surrounding granitoids, which is to say rocks are fluid, they move. They're often considered what we call plastic, which means they move in almost imperceptible ways, but they're still malleable. Here are some more extinctions, all of them terrible in terms of life loss, but for us, cool fossils, cool rocks, and more importantly, the ground we walk on. Whoops. So we have the third extinction in the Permian Triassic times, we have the fourth in the Triassic, the fifth in the Cretaceous Paleogene. And these homes and habitats of the dinosaurs and all their friends form the sediment layers of our own existence. And mountains died too. I always say a lot of these thoughts were coming to me during the pandemic when we were seeing a lot of mass death. And I'm not saying anything about it being justified, but just saying that, well, we'll get to it, but that extinctions, we're looking at the sixth, potentially, the sixth great extinction that humans are expediting. And we might face one within our lifetime, so we must be philosophical about it, or, I don't know, disassociate. So, 80 to 25 million years ago, we had a lot of erosion in this ancestral Sierra. So we're still talking about the old mountains. We haven't even gotten to these ones. 100 million years ago, still dinosaurs. But basically, they started eroding. They were erupting, and over time, losing their mass, losing their sediment, shedding layers, and mellowing out. They got a little less tall. They lost a bit of their stature. Just like me, allegedly, I'm 5'3" now. I used to be 5'4". I don't know what's going on, but I must be eroding, just like these mountains. So here's around Manette. You see these volcanic sediments sliding off. And then to the right, this is Father Crowley Point in Death Valley, technically the Panamint Valley. But you see here, once again, very cool sediments exposed in this half of the valley wall. And then we're looking all the way over there. As this valley is getting pulled apart, sediments are sliding down through alluvial fans and filling the bottom. All right, so, long story short, there used to be a big volcano range that gave birth to the Sierra Nevada. Those mountains faded away, and now underground we have a solidified rock mass that begins to show itself. Heck yeah, all right. So these are the stages of Yosemite. Let me check the time, so sorry. 25. Great. How's everyone doing?
Great.
Woo! All right. So here we are, Yosemite. Once again, isn't this cool? We're all here. That's so lucky. We're so lucky. And we get to talk about it. So, allegedly, there were a few, several stages of this place called Yosemite. Some people, I've seen it as 4 stages. For the purposes of this talk, I did it in 6. I don't know if a geologist wants to argue with me about it. That's what geologists love to do, but I'm not really trying to stake a claim here, just for this presentation. And so, Yosemite has been through a lot of transitions to become the beautiful valley of today. Here's a quote there's a great text, you can read it, it's available publicly online, and that's where I quote a lot of in the next few pages from Francois Mathis, although it's French, so I'm pronouncing too many letters. In the early history of Yosemite Valley, U.S. Geologic Survey from the DOI. Let me go over the stages. Back in the day, so this is still millions of years in the making, we had Yosemite used to be a broad valley stage, or it used to be a broad valley, and then it became a mountain valley, and then it became a canyon, and then it became glaciated, and then it became a lake, and then it became the valley of today. So, in that broad valley stage, the Merced River meandered sluggishly over a broad, level valley floor flanked by rolling hills between 500 and 1,000 feet in height. The crown of El Capitan stood about 900 feet high. There were no cliffs or waterfalls. The entire region was covered with dense, rain-loving vegetation. So I tried to imagine what that might look like. So this is actually the Sisquoc River, and that is around the Sespe River. But these are broad river valleys in Southern California. Back in that time, 23 to 5.3 million years ago, the Miocene epoch, we saw the emergence of kelp forests and grasslands. California hasn't always had these iconic things. And we used to have mastodons, giant tortoises, rhinos, tapirs, and camels as tall as giraffes that lived here in Yosemite. Pretty cool. And you know what's really trippy? That means. So this broad river valley, Merced River, has been flowing for at least 10 million years. That makes me cry. Isn't that so beautiful? I'm not going to cry now, but I have cried over this fact. Right. So the Mountain Valley stage. My goodness, Mike, what is it doing there? So in about 4 more million years, the river is doing its thing. So this whole time, just imagine a river slowly carving the beginnings of what we see today. And now, in this Mountain Valley stage, after it's been deepened about 700 feet by the Merced River, so at this time, the Sierra Nevada was beginning to uplift. I guess the debate is whether it was a fault block falling out, and the geologists can argue about it. We're just going to say they rose up, and all of these creeks started to cascade steeply from the mouths of hanging valleys. The region was covered with mixed forests containing sequoias. Back in the day, sequoias used to have a much greater expanse across the continent. So what might it have looked like 25 to 10 million years ago in the Mountain Valley stage? Well, I thought maybe in the lower part of Kings Canyon National Park, you see these broad V-shaped valleys in the back, that's Lewis Creek, and then some steep cliffs starting to rise up. We don't really see any sharp, cracky looking things yet. And now we're moving on to the canyon stage. So the river's really been doing its thing. The mountains are continuing to rise up. And now, just before the invasion of the glaciers of the Ice Age, the valley had been cut about 1,300 feet by the Merced River. And the region was covered with coniferous forests adapted to a temperate climate with cold, snowy winters. So this is what it could have looked like in the canyon stage. So imagine, about 10 million to 2 million years ago, probably looked a lot like what we see now. But one thing hadn't happened yet. That was the glaciations, and this happened a lot. There were many glaciations over the course of relatively recent geologic history, and in fact, not every glaciation, I believe, even has a name. But here are some of the major ones, and for example, the MTS says during the maximum extent of the Tioga glaciation, which was from 26,000 to 18,000 years ago, glaciers and ice fields covered most of the areas in and around Yosemite National Park above 8,900 feet. So what might that look like? Well, we're looking here from the top of El Capitan on winter's day. And then this is a crude artist's conception, but it's a glacier, right? You can obviously it is a glacier. Filling, so this would just be about all we could see. Forgive me, I was using presentation software to draw that. We're moving on. So the lake stage, my personal favorite, I think. Well, they're all great. This one would just be really cool to see. I would have loved to see this. 10,000 years ago, ancient Lake Yosemite occupied the entire length and breadth of the main Yosemite chamber. It was 5.5 miles long, and its waters lapped the bases of the freshly glaciated. Whoa! On either side. My Matthews. I spoke way too loudly there. All right, let's hit pause on that. Nice. I can just go ahead and tell you, this is one of my favorite lakes in the world. Have you ever been to East Lake? Anyone? In Kings Canyon? Wow, what a place. It's so amazing. And yeah, I figured this is probably what it looked like because you have these sort of hanging valleys. And where you see trees, that's probably where creeks are running down. And then up there, way up there, is the beautiful lake reflection. So a lot of the Sierra, even now, you see these stair steps of ever-growing lakes from source to river. And the whole thing, at least in this region, the lakes are due to glaciers. So there are, I believe, thousands of lakes throughout the Sierra, and the majority are hangers-on from glacial times. And once in a while, we get similar experiences even now. I took this photo a few months ago in a little place called Death Valley. This is the lake that emerged, the ephemeral lake. And I thought it was extremely beautiful. So once in a while, we are afforded glimpses of ancient past. During the Pleistocene and similar times, Death Valley, the reason it is so deep, one reason is it was filled with a gigantic lake. And these alluvial fans that wash down the side of the flanks of Telescope Peak
suggests a lot of movement of water over many, many years. So it's all fluid and flowing. And here we come today to Yosemite Valley. This is a photo from back in the day. And turns out Yosemite is changing pretty much every week. It's shaking and rocking all the time. famous MPS geologist Greg Stock says at least every 5 days on average there will be a rockfall, probably in Yosemite Valley, referring to the greater park. And some of those can be huge, the size of refrigerators, the size of cars. Should we try on your mic?
Hello, thank you so much, Ranger Connie. Hey, can we give Ranger Connie an applause? And thanks for everyone who helped set this up. So, thanks for bearing with us during that extremely difficult time. I'm really sorry. All right, so here we have a map of sorts, rather an infographic of, turns out rock falls have seasons. There's a seasonality to when rocks fall in the park. Perhaps do you observe any color more than the other?
Green.
Green? Yeah. I'm seeing green, I'm also seeing yellow. And you would be correct. The hottest days of summer cause cracks to expand to their maximum width, but the greatest daily in and out movements and the greatest stresses to rock joints come in shoulder months like October and March, when the change between the day's high and low temperatures is the greatest. So I thought that was so poetic that even in the spring and fall, which to humans are seasons of change, are also seasons of change for the rocks. And this is one of the coolest things, in my opinion, that I've learned in geology. Maybe you'll agree. So this is from USGS. Incredible as it may seem, the magnetic field occasionally flips over. The geomagnetic poles are currently roughly coincident with the geographic poles, but occasionally the magnetic poles wander far away from the geographic poles and undergo an excursion from their preferred state. Earth's dynamo has no preference for a particular polarity, so after an excursional period, the magnetic field, upon returning to its usual state of rough alignment with the Earth's rotational axis, could just as easily have one polarity as another. It's a great tongue twister. And then these reversals are random, with no apparent periodicity. We'll move on to their occurrence. They can happen as often as every 10,000 years or so, and as infrequently as every 50 million years or more. The last reversal was about 780,000 years ago. Did you guys know that? Isn't that crazy? So what's cool is you can actually measure it on the sea floor, and you'll see alternating bands of differently colored rock depending on the polarity of it. And I thought that was so beautiful, that there's this kind of spreading book on the sea floor that tells you about Earth's past. And I know I said I wouldn't describe as sexuality, but Earth does seem to switch a lot in terms of polarity. And you might say it's non-binary, but again, these are human terms. Earth is a planet, Mother Earth. We never refer to Earth in gendered terms like that. So, a couple of resident transgender and non-binary organisms of Yosemite. Perhaps you've heard of the sequoias. I'm just finding out about these trees. Turns out they are monoecious, which means male and female cones occur on the same tree. Whoa, what? That's not right. That's not natural. And then you're telling me also there's a cardinal here that's called a bilateral gynandromorph, and it's half male and half female. What is this propaganda? This is crazy. What has happened to our parks, you guys? This is terrible. All right, final stretch. Let's bring it all back home. As in to me, so I was born there. Well, that's not me after I was born. I was several years alive on this earth at that time. But I was still young, and I was a young boy going by Richie. And then when puberty hit, I was pretty unhappy, had an eating disorder, and I really didn't want to be seen at all. I liked to only wear all white clothes. I didn't want to be seen as female or male. I just kind of wanted to disappear and die, and I really struggled a lot with my body. But I've been through a lot of changes, and I'm generally a lot happier now these days that I've gone through hormone therapy. And learning the earth sciences has taught me a bit about how one thing can evolve to become another, and also how something we see today is a lot more complex than meets the eye. So if ever you were to see Yosemite millions of years ago, it wouldn't look like what it does now. In fact, it might be completely covered in ice. You wouldn't see it at all, or it'd even be underground. And the cool thing about Yosemite as a metaphor is, like trans people, it's often an internal thing before it becomes external. All the transformation is happening inside first before you're ready to show yourself to the world. And Yosemite teaches us it's okay if it takes time. That's fine. So here's me more recently. Here's me in Yosemite on the left. Those are my nieces running in the background. And here's me with the sequoias, digging life. And then here's me on the right, recently with young Indigo, who has traveled through time to join me as a great companion. But these rocks are in Joshua Tree, also formed during Mesozoic times. They've been around as long as the Sierra, pretty much, in terms of their magmic existence. And I used to not be a dog person. If you saw me today with a dog as a kid, you would never believe it. I used to be afraid of dogs. And that's been one of the bigger transformations in my recent life. I love this dog so much. And for me, she's a really good example of, again, how people can change. That's kind of, it used to be one of my defining character traits, that I didn't like dogs. And I love this one so much. So this is Yosemite, and as you look at it over the next couple days, I hope you contemplate all the factors of change that have gone into it, all of the things that took to make it this way, and how lucky we are to see it in this time, in this day, as we are, because it won't be this way forever, and we're going to go a lot sooner than Yosemite will. That's pretty much guaranteed. So Yosemite does teach us that the world is in continual change, and even rocks are fluid, and that we all go through life and death cycles and chapters, and that we can carry a piece of our past within us as we become new, and that even endings are beginnings. Fungi teach us a lot about that. If you see fungi around here decaying a tree, it's making the way for new life. So this is all pretty much done. Wow, cool, fun. I hope you had a good time. Thank you for joining. Here's Puppy Indigo.